I always say that I never sang any style of music that I hadn't heard in my household growing up. I can't approach it with any kind of authenticity.
A cultural hero or a role model or anything like that. You know, I don't want it to be the absolute last word in what the trendy style is.
What if one of the most beloved voices in rock had a secret list of names she could never forgive? Linda Ronstadt, the queen of rock, the woman who redefined American music across genres, was always seen as graceful, untouchable, and above the drama. But behind the magazine covers, the Grammy wins, and the powerhouse vocals was a side of Linda the public never got to see. A side scarred by betrayals, humiliations, and egos too big to ignore. Today, we're diving into the 7 musicians Linda Ronstadt never forgave, and the untold stories behind each fallout. Trust me, some of these names will leave you speechless. Section 1, From Tucson to Rock Royalty. Before the feuds, before the headlines, Linda was just a girl from Tucson, Arizona. She grew up in a house where music was as common as dinner conversations, folk songs, rancheras, harmonies filling the air. By her late teens, she packed up for Los Angeles, chasing a dream just as the folk rock movement was taking off. Her first taste of success came with the Stone Ponies and their hit, Different Drum. But Linda wasn't destined to share the spotlight, she was born to command it. By the early 70s, she was a solo star, blending rock, country, pop, and folk in ways no critic could put in a single box. She didn't just sing songs, she transformed them. She also had an eye for talent. Musicians like Don Henley and Glenn Frey played in her band before breaking away to form the Eagles. She gave people chances, and sometimes, they used those chances to walk right out the door, and that's where our story really begins. Section 2, Don Henley, the drummer who got too big at first. Don Henley was just grateful for the steady gig. He drummed behind Linda, sang backup, and built connections through her. She believed in him, introduced him to producers, gave him stage time, and supported his ambitions, but when the Eagles took off in 1972, gratitude quickly disappeared. Fame changed Henley. He went from quiet sideman to superstar, and his ego grew just as fast as the band's record sales. The breaking point came in 1975, backstage at the Universal Amphitheater. Linda had just finished a roaring set when Henley made a cutting remark in front of peers and crew: "You should stick to covers and leave songwriting to the real artists." The room froze. Linda didn't scream, didn't lash out. Instead, she turned cold, revoked his backstage pass, and never looked back. Publicly, she stayed graceful. Privately, she called him a climber who had lost his soul chasing the spotlight. Their paths never crossed again, but Henley wasn't the only rock legend who left scars on Linda's story. Section 3, Jim Morrison, the onstage disaster. A smoky afterparty in Los Angeles. Rock stars, groupies, and industry insiders all under one roof. Jim Morrison, frontman of The Doors, had already built his reputation as magnetic, chaotic, and unpredictable. That night, Morrison jumped into an impromptu performance, half drunk, shirt open, eyes wild. The crowd was eating it up. Then, in the middle of the chaos, he spotted Linda. Without warning, he pulled her on stage, clutching her wrist as if she were part of the act. The audience cheered, expecting a flirty duet. Instead, Morrison leaned in, trying to kiss her in front of everyone. Linda pulled away. He stumbled, knocking over a mic stand in a crash that silenced the room. The moment was awkward, humiliating, unforgettable. Months later, Morrison twisted the knife in a radio interview, mocking her as sweet but spineless. Linda never confronted him publicly, but in private she summed him up in 4 words: a brilliant wreck, poisonous. And Morrison was far from the last man to underestimate her. Section 4, Neil Young, when activism turned cold. A massive benefit concert for farm workers. For Linda, the cause was personal. Growing up in Arizona, she'd seen the struggles of the Southwest firsthand. She was proud to share the stage with Neil Young, a fellow artist with a reputation for fighting injustice, but behind the scenes, unity fell apart. During rehearsals, Neil dismissed Linda's song suggestions, calling her sound too commercial. After the show, he told the press she wasn't built for protest music. To Linda, it wasn't just criticism. It was betrayal, from someone she respected. She left quietly, vowing never again to share a stage with him. In her words, Neil was loud in message, cruel in execution. Section 5, Frank Zappa, Genius Without Mercy. By 1974, Linda had proven herself fearless in crossing genres. So when word spread that she might collaborate with Frank Zappa, the mastermind of experimental rock, the industry buzzed with excitement, but the collaboration died before it could begin. In rehearsal, Linda suggested arrangement tweaks. Zappa smirked and brushed her off. Then, in front of his band, he cut the music and delivered a brutal line: "This is what happens when you hand real music to a pop singer." The room went silent. Linda didn't argue. She quietly set down her headphones, gathered her things, and walked out. Privately, she would later call Zappa brilliant but brutal. To her, his genius wasn't worth his cruelty. Section 6, David Crosby, the Laurel Canyon fallout. In the late 60s, Laurel Canyon was a utopia for musicians, doors left open, harmonies drifting through the streets. Linda and David Crosby were part of that dream, sharing stages, swapping stories, living in the heart of the counterculture, but by the late 70s, the dream cracked. A minor disagreement in the studio over a key change spiraled into a heated fight. Soon after, Crosby gave an interview to Rolling Stone where he called Linda manufactured, implying she was more product than artist. For Linda, the wound was twofold: the loss of a friend and the public questioning of her artistry. She cut him off completely. His name, she said, wouldn't even be spoken in her presence. Section 7, Elvis Costello, punk's sharp tongue. By 1979, Linda was at the peak of her fame. At a major festival in Cleveland, she shared the bill with a rising star from the punk scene, Elvis Costello. Before the show, Costello smirked to reporters and delivered a line designed to sting: "Her music is background music for brunch." The insult spread instantly. Linda confronted him calmly later that night, asking what he meant. Instead of apologizing, Costello, drunk and dismissive, threw out another jab and walked away. To the press, it was punk bravado. To Linda, it was empty cruelty. From then on, she never mentioned his name publicly again. Privately, she dismissed him as all ego, no soul. Section 8, Paul Simon, the dream duet that died in 1982. Fans buzzed with excitement. Paul Simon and Linda Ronstadt were planning a duet. On paper, it was magic waiting to happen. In reality, it was a disaster. From the first rehearsal, Simon was controlling, stopping her midline, rewriting sections without input, correcting her phrasing down to the syllable. Instead of collaboration, Linda felt like she was being graded by a strict schoolmaster. The chemistry never clicked. The song was quietly shelved, and Linda swore she'd never record with Paul Simon again. She later described it as singing with a stopwatch ticking in my ear. The dream duet had died before it was born. Conclusion: 7 names, 7 scars, and decades of silence. Linda Ronstadt wasn't one for public feuds. She carried herself with grace. But behind the scenes, she lived through betrayal, ego, and humiliation from some of the biggest names in music history. These weren't just petty spats. They were moments that shaped her career, her choices, and her strength. Linda outlasted many of the men who once underestimated her. She built a legacy that couldn't be erased by their cruelty. So now the question is, which name on this list shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you love stories like this, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more untold music history, because some secrets in rock and roll are too good to stay hidden.